History is shaped by those rare individuals whose vision and ambition transform the world. Among them stands one name, Napoleon Bonaparte. Now, on Tech Tales and Truths, we follow the extraordinary journey of a Corsican boy who rose to command Europe and left a legacy that still guides modern law, government, and warfare. Our story begins on the Mediterranean island of Corsica, a mountainous jewel lying between the Italian peninsula and the south of France. The date is August 15th, 1769. Only months earlier, France had officially annexed this once independent island from the Republic of Genoa. The locals still spoke Italian dialects, still clung to their own customs, and many resented their new French rulers. Into this tensed world, a child was born who would one day rule most of Europe, Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon's father, Carlo Bonaparte, belonged to a modest but proud family of minor Italian nobility. His mother, Letizia Romolino, was renowned for her strength and discipline. From them, young Napoleone inherited ambition, a quick mind, and an iron will. The Bonapartes were not wealthy, but they valued education and opportunity. Carlo, a trained lawyer, knew that aligning with France, despite local hostility, could open doors for his children. In 1779, at the age of 10, Napoleon left his island home for mainland France. Imagine the young boy, Italian accent, awkward in French, boarding a ship for the first time. He was bound for the military academy at Brienne-le-Château, far from the sun-drenched Mediterranean, to the cold winters of northern France. Life at Brienne was harsh. Napoleon endured mockery for his accent and his modest means. Yet he excelled in mathematics, artillery science, and most of all, strategy. He devoured books on history and the great generals of the past, from Alexander the Great to Julius Caesar. These years forged in him a sense of discipline and a fierce determination to prove himself. By the age of 16, Napoleon had earned a commission as a second lieutenant of artillery. Artillery was the cutting edge of 18th century warfare, technical, demanding, and prestigious. The young officer was now stationed in Valence, studying gunnery tables by night and observing society by day. Yet beyond the parade grounds, the winds of revolution were rising. When the French Revolution erupted in 1789, Napoleon recognized both danger and opportunity. He sympathized with revolutionary ideals of merit and equality, ideals that could elevate a capable man beyond the old aristocratic hierarchies. Over the next few years, he maneuvered carefully, balancing loyalty to the new republic with his own ambition. His first great test came at Toulon in 1793. Royalists had seized the port and invited the British fleet to protect it. At just 24, Captain Bonaparte proposed a daring artillery plan that forced the British to withdraw. His reward? promotion to brigadier general, and the attention of France's revolutionary leaders. Napoleon Bonaparte, now adopting the French spelling of his name, had announced himself to the world. By the mid-1790s, the young Corsican outsider had transformed into one of the Republic's brightest military minds. The path from provincial cadet to national hero was complete. But this was only the beginning. The world would soon learn how far Napoleon Bonaparte's ambition could reach. By the mid-1790s, Europe was ablaze with conflict. France, still reeling from revolution, faced coalitions of monarchies determined to crush the new republic. Amid this turmoil, a 26-year-old brigadier general prepared to demonstrate a genius for strategy the world had rarely seen. His name was now fully French: Napoleon Bonaparte. In March 1796, the Directory, the shaky government of post-revolutionary France, gave Napoleon command of the Army of Italy. What he inherited was a demoralized, ill-supplied force facing seasoned Austrian troops. Yet within weeks, he transformed it. He moved swiftly, inspired the men with fiery speeches, and reorganized the army into agile corps capable of independent action. The Italian campaign became a masterclass in speed and deception. At Montenotte, he split Austrian forces. At Lodi, he seized the bridge under withering fire, personally urging his troops forward. Word of the Little Corporal, a general who shared danger with his men, spread like wildfire. Within a year, Napoleon forced Austria to sign the Treaty of Campo Formio, redrawing the map of northern Italy and elevating France's position in Europe. Flush with victory, the French government sent him on a bold expedition to Egypt in 1798. The goal? Strike British trade routes to India and challenge their empire. Napoleon defeated the Mamluk forces at the Battle of the Pyramids, using disciplined squares of infantry against charging cavalry. Though Admiral Nelson's fleet destroyed the French Navy at Abu Qir Bay, the campaign unveiled unexpected treasures. Scientists accompanying the army documented ancient wonders and discovered the Rosetta Stone, key to unlocking hieroglyphs. Despite military setbacks, Napoleon's reputation at home only grew. He cultivated an image of enlightened conqueror, publishing bulletins, staging grand ceremonies, and ensuring that every success, real or exaggerated, reached Paris. To the French public, he appeared invincible, a hero who blended reason, science, and war. Meanwhile, France's government teetered on collapse. The Directory was corrupt and unpopular, threatened by royalists and radical revolutionaries alike. In 1799, sensing his moment, Napoleon quietly left his army in Egypt and returned to France. His arrival electrified Paris. Crowds hailed him as the nation's savior. On the 18th of Brumaire, November 9th, 1799, Napoleon executed a swift and bloodless coup. Backed by loyal troops, he dissolved the legislature and established the consulate, naming himself First Consul of France. At only 30 years of age, Napoleon Bonaparte had seized the reins of a great nation. The soldier of fortune was now a statesman, poised to reshape Europe. By the winter of 1799, France stood at a crossroads. After a decade of revolution, the nation was exhausted, its people hungry for stability, its leaders discredited by corruption and endless war. Into this vacuum stepped a young general whose victories had captured the public imagination, Napoleon Bonaparte. The coup of 18 Brumaire swept away the failing Directory and replaced it with a new government, the Consulate. Napoleon became First Consul, sharing nominal power with two colleagues, but in truth, holding the reins of the state. Almost overnight, he shifted from soldier to statesman. Napoleon's first task was to bring order. He stabilized the currency by creating the Bank of France, reformed taxation, and rebuilt France's infrastructure. But perhaps his most enduring achievement was the Napoleonic Code, a civil law system that guaranteed property rights, religious freedom, and equality before the law. Principles that still influence legal codes across the world today. To reconcile a nation divided by revolution, Napoleon sought peace with the Catholic Church. The Concordat of 1801 restored the Church's role in French life, while ensuring that the state remained supreme. For many citizens, this agreement signaled the end of ideological turmoil and the beginning of national unity. Abroad, Napoleon signed the Treaty of Amiens with Britain in 1802, bringing a brief but welcome peace to a continent weary of war. He also reorganized education, founding the lycée system to train a new generation of civil servants and officers loyal to the state rather than to privilege. Napoleon understood the power of public opinion. Through nationwide plebiscites, he asked citizens to confirm his policies and, crucially, to make the consulship for life. Millions voted yes, believing that only Napoleon could preserve the revolution's gains while ensuring stability. On the 2nd of December, 1804, Paris witnessed a spectacle for the ages. Pope Pius VII waited to crown the new ruler. But in a gesture that stunned the world, Napoleon took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it upon his own head. With that single act, he declared that his authority came not from the church, not from ancient tradition, but from himself and the will of the people. He was now Emperor of the French. France had found its strong leader, and Europe its next great power. Napoleon Bonaparte had transformed a revolutionary republic into a modern empire, setting the stage for breathtaking victories and, eventually, epic challenges. By the dawn of 1805, Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte stood at the height of his power. France had emerged from revolutionary chaos as a disciplined, modern state, and its army, La Grande Armée, was the most formidable fighting force in Europe. What began as a republic defending itself had become an empire seeking dominance. Napoleon's genius lay in organization as well as inspiration. He divided the Grande Armée into independent corps, each able to march, fight, and live off the land. This flexibility allowed lightning maneuvers that confounded slower opponents and let him strike where least expected. When a new coalition of Britain, Austria, and Russia threatened France, Napoleon moved first. In a campaign of dazzling speed, he encircled and captured an entire Austrian army at Ulm, forcing their surrender without a major battle. His troops then pivoted toward the heart of the continent. On December 2nd, 1805, exactly 1 year after his coronation, Napoleon faced the combined Russian and Austrian forces near the town of Austerlitz. Outnumbered but never outthought, he feigned weakness, lured the Allies onto a fog-shrouded plateau, then struck decisively at their center. The Battle of the Three Emperors ended in a crushing French victory, forcing the Holy Roman Emperor to sue for peace and effectively dissolving the 1,000-year-old Holy Roman Empire. In 1806, Prussia challenged Napoleon and suffered the same fate. At Jena and Auerstedt, French forces shattered the Prussian army and occupied Berlin. The old military powers of Europe reeled before the relentless Grande Armée. Russia pressed on but was defeated at Friedland in 1807. Napoleon and Tsar Alexander I met dramatically on a raft in the middle of the Niemen River, signing the Treaty of Tilsit, which temporarily brought peace and redrew the map of Europe. Determined to weaken Britain, Napoleon turned to economic warfare. The continental system sought to blockade British goods from European ports. But the Royal Navy ruled the seas, and smuggling flourished. The policy strained France's allies and sowed seeds of future conflict. At home, Napoleon's empire glittered. He married Archduchess Marie-Louise of Austria, linking the House of Bonaparte to Europe's oldest dynasty and securing an heir, the King of Rome. For a moment, it seemed nothing could stop him. From Lisbon to Warsaw, from Rome to Hamburg, the Napoleonic star blazed at its zenith. By 1810, the French Empire stretched from the Atlantic to the edges of Poland. Yet even as Napoleon seemed unassailable, the seeds of his downfall were already sown. Ambition had carried him to the summit. That same ambition would now draw him into a series of wars he could not win. Napoleon's first serious wound came in Spain. In 1808, he installed his brother Joseph on the Spanish throne. But the Spanish people rose in revolt. British forces under Arthur Wellesley, later the Duke of Wellington, joined local guerrillas. The resulting Peninsular War became a grinding conflict of ambushes, brutal reprisals, and endless attrition. French soldiers called it the Spanish Ulcer, a bleeding sore that drained men and treasure for years. At the same time, Napoleon's continental system, meant to strangle Britain's trade, faltered. Smugglers outwitted customs officials, and European economies suffered under the blockade. Allies like Russia grew restless, questioning French dominance. Tensions with Tsar Alexander I reached a breaking point. In 1812, Napoleon assembled the largest army Europe had ever seen, over 600,000 soldiers from across his empire, and marched east to compel Russian obedience. The invasion began with rapid advances, but Russian commanders employed a scorched earth strategy, retreating and denying the French supplies. After a costly victory at Borodino, Napoleon entered a deserted, burning Moscow. He waited in vain for a peace offer. As the brutal Russian winter set in, starvation and disease ravaged the Grande Armée. Of the original 600,000, Barely 100,000 staggered back across the Niemen River. Europe seized the moment. Britain, Prussia, Russia, Austria, and Sweden formed the Sixth Coalition. In 1813, at the massive Battle of Leipzig, the Battle of Nations, Napoleon faced over 300,000 Allied troops. After 4 days of savage fighting, French forces were decisively defeated. The tide had turned. By early 1814, coalition armies crossed into France itself. Though Napoleon fought a brilliant defensive campaign, he was outnumbered and exhausted. His marshals, fearing annihilation, urged him to abdicate. On April 6th, he signed the act, Emperor no more. The once mighty conqueror was exiled to the tiny Mediterranean island of Elba, allowed a small guard and a ceremonial title. Europe breathed a sigh of relief, believing the Napoleonic era had ended. But the story of this remarkable man was not finished. Spring 1814. Europe believed the age of Napoleon was over. The once mighty emperor now ruled only a tiny island, Elba, off the Italian coast. Yet even in exile, Napoleon's restless mind plotted a return. Reports of discontent in France reached him. The restored Bourbon king, Louis XVIII, was unpopular. Soldiers still revered their old commander. In February 1815, defying guards and treaties alike, Napoleon slipped away with a few hundred loyal men. He landed near Cannes and marched north. At every village, troops sent to arrest him instead rallied to his side. What history remembers as the 100 Days had begun. Paris erupted as the emperor entered the Tuileries Palace. Louis XVIII fled. Europe's monarchs, shocked and alarmed, formed the Seventh Coalition. Britain's Duke of Wellington and Prussia's Marshal Blucher prepared their armies for the inevitable clash. Napoleon moved swiftly into Belgium, hoping to strike before the Allies united. After initial success at Ligny, he faced Wellington near the village of Waterloo on June 18, 1815. Torrential rains turned fields to mud, delaying his attack. French cavalry charges thundered against implacable British squares. Late in the day, Blucher's Prussians arrived, tipping the balance. As dusk fell, the French army collapsed in chaos. Waterloo became a byword for final, crushing defeat. Within days, Paris fell once more. Napoleon abdicated for the second time, hoping to seek asylum in the United States. But the British Navy closed every escape route. The Allies chose a far more remote prison, the windswept island of Saint Helena, in the South Atlantic, nearly 2,000 kilometers from any continent. Under heavy guard, Napoleon arrived in October 1815, a world away from the grand capitals he once ruled. For the next 6 years, he lived in Longwood House, dictating memoirs, walking the barren hills, and debating with the officers who watched him. On May 5th, 1821, Napoleon Bonaparte died, likely of stomach cancer, at the age of 51. His body was returned to Paris in 1840, entombed beneath the Golden Dome of Les Invalides, where millions still visit. Love him or loathe him, Napoleon reshaped Europe and left an indelible mark on law, politics, and military strategy. His story is the story of ambition and the limits of power. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life of Napoleon Bonaparte, from a Corsican childhood to the windswept cliffs of Saint Helena. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm your host, and this is Tech Tales and Truths, bringing the past to life, one story at a time.